everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of Coffee Talk, our ongoing editorial webinar series. Today's topic is Top Email Security Threats in 2023, What Partners Need to Know. Each of these hour-long, information-packed Coffee Talk episodes features observations and insights from an independent expert. And this particular episode is sponsored by Infima. So many thanks to them for underwriting today's installment, because without their support, the series just would not be possible. And thanks to you for joining us. I am Gladys Rama, the editorial director, and I'll be moderating today's Coffee Talk episode. Before we get started, just a couple of quick bits of housekeeping. First, this episode is being recorded, so keep an eye out for an email from us with a link to that recording. It should be coming your way in the next couple of days. Second, we are going to make some time during this talk for questions from you. So at any time, please enter your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Third, on the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to see some extra resources provided by Infima, so please be sure to check those out. And finally, as a small thank you to the first 200 attendees who stick with us to the end, we are giving you a $5 gift certificate to Starbucks. Now let's meet our first presenter, Howard M. Cohen. If you've attended a few of our other coffee talks, summits, etc., you're well familiar with Howard. He's a 35-plus year IT executive veteran who today writes for and about the IT channel, including on rcpmag.com, which is our channel partner-focused website. His blog is called Evolving MSP, The Evolving MSP, so please do check that out whenever you have a chance. Howard is a frequent speaker at IT industry events like Microsoft Inspire, Citrix Synergy, ConnectWise IT Nation, Cloud Partner Summit, CompTIA Channel Con, and on and on. Howard, we're so happy to have you back. Please take it away.
I really appreciate it. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Email Challenges in 2023, What Partners Need to Know. If you have attended any of my presentations in the past, you know that I love to start everyone with a word of the day. Today's word is a little unusual in that it's an acronym, but it refers to that part of the network that engineers find to be the most difficult to manage. And they refer to that as the PEBCAC. The PEBCAC. That is the part that exists between the keyboard and the chair, better known by the rest of us as the user. Why is the user so incredibly difficult to manage? Basically because users are unpredictable. A digital device will always do what you tell it to do, the way you tell it to do it. It'll do it the same way every time. Very seldom does it ever malfunction or do something other than what you want it to do. People, on the other hand, not so much. People will do what they think is right. They're distracted, they're emotional, all kinds of things can enter into it, and they become unpredictable. So they are the portion of the network that is most difficult to manage. And why do I talk about that in a presentation about email? Well, here's a hint. Last year, the folks at CISA, and I'm sure those of you who are up on the news know who CISA is. It's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, part of your federal government. They indicate that 2021 trends showed that there was an increased globalized threat of ransomware. Oh my God, globalized. Ransomware has been big. The counterpart to CISA in the United Kingdom is the National Cybersecurity Center, spelled in the British way. They've indicated that ransomware is the #1 cyber threat for enterprises. And indeed, most sources that you look at will tell you that ransomware is #1. It is the most frequent attack. It is the most widespread difficulty that everybody is facing in the email security world. This most recently, Forbes announced that ransomware has been upgraded to a national security threat in a new White House cybersecurity strategy document. It is a national security threat in that it impacts everybody. And so, what do we do about it? Well, ransomware, let's start off by understanding that ransomware is not, it's not an attack unto itself, in and of itself. It is the end of a process, any one of a number of processes. Maybe the best way to envision it is like a game board, where ransomware is the ultimate destination. That's where you're going to get. But you start way back at the beginning of the path. Now, the way you know that you've reached the end, that you've reached that ransomware point, is when you see something that looks kind of like this. And if you've never received a ransomware notice, it is a truly frightening experience that you won't forget. It makes you shake inside. It's really hard to describe and hard to compare to anything else. All of a sudden, you feel totally violated, totally threatened, and like, okay, the world is about to change for the worst. And here in this wonderful notice here, it's telling you your personal files are encrypted. Now, that's not a notification that you've done the right thing. They're telling you that they have encrypted your files. The attacker has encrypted your files. And they have the key, but you don't. You don't have a key to unencrypt or to decrypt those files. You can't get at them anymore. You can't get at your own data. And they're also threatening here that if you don't do what they say, they're going to destroy that key, and then neither you nor anybody else will ever be able to access your data ever again. Gone forever. Now, the good news, if there is such a thing as good news here, is that they're not asking for a whole lot. They're asking either for $100 US or 100 euros. Not a big ransom. This is becoming more and more common. Ransomware attackers have discovered that when they ask for a very small ransom, they usually get it. They get paid. Whereas if they ask for a ransom that's too big, the victim's going to find another way. They're just going to suffer the pain, and they don't get paid. So they've been asking for smaller and smaller ransoms. That is not to say that all the stats you see about people paying millions of dollars to get their data back don't happen. They do. There are large organizations that are paying millions of dollars to get their own data back from an attacker. But there are just as many small to medium businesses and larger medium businesses that are getting charged much less and figure, what the heck? Unfortunately, what the heck is not a good answer, because it encourages the thieves to continue committing their crimes. And we want to get them to stop criming. So, there's got to be a better way. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Here's another, I love this one. This is just, you've been hit. And this is how you're going to end up. And then they give you a README text so you can find out all the awfulness that the other one told you right up front. And yet another one with the good old skull and crossbones, pirating your data from you. Your computer has been locked, and the server will eliminate the key after 24 hours. They're very threatening, and rightly so. They are threatening to deprive you of your data. And so nobody's really very happy about getting a notice like that. Now, that's the end. That's the end of the path. When we get to that ransomware point, we start to get these horrible messages from them telling us that here's what you got to pay and here's why. But let's go back to the start. Let's go to the beginning of our trip down this wonderful path. One of the places at which we can start, probably the most popular one, is referred to as a phishing email. A phishing email. And what is a phishing email? For those of you who have never experienced them or are unfamiliar with them, they look kind of like this. Now, this is just one. And this one says it comes from Netflix. Let me assure you, it does not come from Netflix. It doesn't come from anything resembling Netflix. It indicates that your payment details are out of date and you need to update them. How friendly. So just click this little red button here to update your account right now. I assure you, when you click that button, you won't be updating anything. On the other hand, the sender of this email will be updating all your data with new encryption or corruption, or they may just steal the files outright. It's hard to know, but you've opened the door. By clicking that red button, you open the door and allow these cyber criminals to get in and corrupt your information and make it so that you can't get at it unless you pay them to release it to you. Not nice. Okay, here's another one. This one comes from your bank. I mean, who do you trust more than you trust your bank? There's some things to notice about it. The colorization is Citibank colorization. Those are the colors Citibank uses. That is the logo that Citibank uses. The typography is the same typeface that Citibank uses. It looks genuine, and anybody just opening it up would look at it and say, oh, I got to do this. And they would go ahead and do whatever it tells them to do. And whatever it tells them to do, I guarantee you it's going to lead to disaster. How do you avoid the disaster? Here's our first hint. We look at the address bar, the URL bar, and we see what the address is that this is coming from. In this case, it says it's coming, I can't even produce this, from tripeproductos.com.br. It does say citibank.com. If you look before and after it, it has been stuck into the rest of the expression of the address, but it's not the core address itself. That is not either the top level generic domain. It is not the specific domain for, well, it is the specific domain for the sender, but not this sender. It is, and it's not the server name either. That is tripeproductos.com.br. So it's not Citibank. And it's actually easy to tell that it's not Citibank if you look. And therein lies the problem. Most people just don't look. They don't. It doesn't occur to them that this might be a fake. And therefore, they just go ahead and do what they're asked to do and suffer the consequences. So looking for the address is one good way to start realizing that you may be dealing with something that's not what it says it is. Here's one from Microsoft indicating that your password expired and that all you have to do is click over here in this blue button to keep your password. Of course, if you were to look at the URL underneath that blue button, the link underneath that button, you'd see that it has nothing to do with Microsoft. Microsoft isn't even mentioned there. Apparently it's Antonio's of Simsbury.com that is sending this. Now, here's the thing. It's telling you to update your password or keep your password. If you were to go to www.microsoft.com and track your way down to the login section that tells you where to update your password, if your password is indeed expired, it would still be expired there. And so what we suggest as a good way to protect yourself is when you get one of these wonderfully convenient messages and it says keep password, or it says click here to adjust or click here to change, just don't believe it. Just don't believe it. To assume that it's not what it says it is. And then just go directly into the website to find out if it is indeed for real. This way you protect yourself better than you ever could any other way. Don't click the button. Just don't click it. Go to the website directly, manually, yourself, and find your way to where you need to be to do what they're suggesting you need to do. Here is another one from Microsoft. And in this case, your login is about to be stopped. And that's bad news. You don't want to be unable to log into the network. So you're going to click that button that says, visit your email here to update. And again, don't click the button. Go to Microsoft.com and work your way around to your settings and find the setting for your login and make sure that it's up to date and functional and good. If it's not, you'll still get to correct it. If it is fine, then you know this was a fake. And here again, if you look up at the top, this is an email coming in instead of a website. It's from System Information. But when you look at who System Information is, it says postmaster@mail.com. What does that have to do with Microsoft? Why is Microsoft using mail.com? And so you know there's something just wrong with this message. So what we've just seen are 4 examples of brand impersonation. Most phishing emails feature brand impersonation. They look like they come from somebody you know, somebody you trust. They look incredibly genuine. And the reason that I showed you 2 of them, beyond differentiating between websites and emails, is that Microsoft is by far the most impersonated brand on the internet. Followed closely by Facebook and a few others, but more thieves, more cyber criminals like to impersonate Microsoft because they know how trusted Microsoft is. So you need to watch out for that. You need to find ways. You need to be taught ways. And for those of you who are responsible for email in your organization, you need to teach your people ways. We'll talk about that training a little bit later in the presentation. There is also another version of phishing, if you will, called spear phishing, which I'm sure you may have heard of. The difference, a phishing email usually goes out broadly. It's broadcast to a lot of addresses, hoping that somebody will be gullible enough and foolish enough to click on the thing that you're asking them to click on. Spear phishing is focused on a specific recipient. You're really targeting somebody who perhaps has better access to data, has broader rights on the network, somebody who you really like them to open the door for you because you can get at more stuff. And so spear phishing is very focused and just as dangerous. Okay, so we've gone through phishing emails. Another kind of email that has been gaining popularity is called a business email compromise. Business email compromise. Rather than doing brand impersonation, excuse me, what the cyber criminal is impersonating is your boss. You get an email that is ostensibly from your boss. Now here, Jane is getting an email from her CEO, John Smith, saying that he's very angry with her for not getting a bill paid. He goes on to say in the next sentence that he wants her to send the funds to this address immediately or start looking for another job. Okay, first of all, I hope there are no CEOs out there who write emails that are that nasty. It's unseemly. But beyond that, when was the last time you saw a CEO tell an AP clerk where to send a payment? It's just weird. It's unusual. And indeed, this particular person probably would have sent the funds to that location. Not as odd as you think it is. I myself, a long time ago, sent an invoice, a fake invoice, to my own accounts payable manager to see if she would indeed pay it. And she did. She sent me a check, which I brought in the next day, presented to her, and asked her what happened. It was embarrassing for her, and I felt bad for embarrassing her, but she never did it again. So, there are lots of stories like that. There's the story of a CEO who left his office door open and left his computer logged in. His IT director saw that, walked in, sat down, and wrote an email firing himself. And the next morning, he brought a print of that to the CEO saying, "What's the meaning of this? Why am I being fired?" And the CEO did one of the blah, 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 blah. He just didn't know what was going on. At which point the IT manager explained to him, that's just not good digital hygiene. You don't want to leave your door open and unlocked, and you don't want to leave your computer logged in. You make it too easy for somebody to do something unseemly. So there are a lot of ways of protecting against business email compromises. Some are more simple than others. Social media has become another way of cracking the door into other people's networks. People are attacking on all the different social media outlets, asking you to click a link, asking you to go to a specific site to see something in particular. They may even give you a button. And when you push that button or click that link, the disaster just begins. The door is open, they come in, they steal your data, they encrypt it, you're stuck. And so social media, another way in which cyber criminals are entering into the network, ultimately with the goal of achieving a ransomware attack. Another one is called domain squatting. Domain squatting. We saw an example of that earlier, but this is a little more insidious, okay? This one tries to look like who it says it is. So here's the URL for Wells Fargo, the real one. If you go to wellsfargo.com, you will get to the Wells Fargo website. However, if it's entered like this, it still looks like it says Wells Fargo. And depending upon which typeface your computer is using, it may look exactly or almost exactly like the real thing. But it is not WELLSFARGO. It is WE11STARG0. It's a different address. It is a different address. And if you respond to it, you're responding to you don't know who. And when it's in all caps, it's even harder to spot. The thing is, it's hardest to spot when you're not looking for it. And again, therein lies the problem. It's not that people don't see it. It's not that they miss it. They don't look for it at all. And you can't, if they haven't been warned, you really can't blame them. Most people wouldn't think to look for the URL of an address, of an addressor. So domain squatting, getting yourself a domain name that looks just like a real company domain, is a widespread way of attacking someone's network and getting in to do a ransomware attack. Another one that's been popular for a long time is RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. That protocol you use when you're, let's say, working from home and you want to be working on your computer in the office, but you're not there. So you connect to that computer in the office and your computer mirrors that computer. And you work as if you were there. It's actually very effective, very efficient. Speed is good, responsiveness is good. People love it. Unfortunately, just like you can connect to your computer in the office, if anybody else gets your credentials, and there's many ways for them to do so, they can connect to your computer in the office, and then they're connected to everything you have access to. And they can begin their ransomware routine very, very easily. Okay, so we have seen several different ways. There are a few other email attacks to take note of. Hijacking people's accounts. In some cases, accounts get hijacked because somebody managed to get somebody else's credentials. This is very popular on internal attacks, where the person who's doing the attacking is actually inside the organization and is able to obtain somebody else's credentials, often because that somebody wrote their password on a sticky note and stuck it under the keyboard thinking, oh, nobody will find it there. Yeah, okay. Another one is spoofing. I apologize for the color combination here. The colors have changed. Spoofing, that is, there are digital ways to make your email address look like somebody else's and then communicating as if you were them. Fake alerts. We saw a few of those from Microsoft before. This is danger, danger, Will Robinson. Oh my God, the worst is going to happen. Your computer's going to completely melt down if you don't click this button and take this action. Unfortunately, these fake alerts victimize the most vulnerable, people who aren't terribly technically adept, retirees, people who are using their computers for leisure. And unfortunately, they have access to their own bank accounts and whatnot. This is how criminals often get in. They often just get in and get those people to pay them to fix the problem they've indicated that doesn't really exist. Similarly, fake invoices. As I said before, I faked an invoice to my accounts payable clerk, and it was horrible for her. But people pay fake invoices all the time. And sometimes it's not even a matter of getting you to pay it. Sometimes it's just click here so that I can get at your data. Fake surveys. There's tons of surveys hitting us all the time. Those surveys will collect a lot of information, not only directly from you, but also metadata just through your connection to the survey. So be very careful when taking surveys. You may want to contact the sender and ask them if indeed the survey you've received is from them. Fake notifications, very similar. You're told that something is about to happen, you have to go someplace and do a certain thing. Here are the directions, click here and get the map. Oh no. And I can't believe that I haven't mentioned it earlier enough, but just as frequently as they give you a link to click, they'll give you a malicious attachment. You've just received a fax. You didn't know you had a fax receiving service, but hey, you got a fax. Click here to open your fax. Don't click there. Just don't click that fax. Don't open that document, because once you do, all of your data is at threat. So malicious attachments are just as dangerous as anything else we've got out there. Okay, so we've looked at a lot of different ways that cyber criminals can commence a cyber attack that leads to ransomware. There are a few new ones that are emerging on the scene that you ought to be aware of. One of them that's horrifically insidious is a multi-factor authentication attack. Now, multi-factor authentication has become enormously popular over the last few years. It's been around for decades, but it didn't really gain popular use until the last 10, 12 years. Now you give your password, and then you have to go and receive a 4 to 6 digit code, usually on your mobile phone, that you then have to enter following your password to be able to get onto the network. Now, this is, again, combining something your password, with something you have, which is your mobile phone in this case. Unfortunately, cyber criminals have figured out how to get by that, how to fake that for you. They'll establish a proxy system that will intercept your request for the 6-digit code and provide a 6-digit code that's not the one you thought was coming. And when you enter that code, they then take all of your login information and everything they need to be able to get on as you and corrupt your data. So all of a sudden, multi-factor authentication becomes less than trustworthy. This is brand spanking new. Another thing they're taking advantage of is MFA, or authentication fatigue. Forever, we have been trying to figure out the balance between making it easy for a user to use their device and yet keeping it so secure that nobody else but them can use their device. The problem is that the steps they have to take to secure the device are the opposite of what they want to make the device easy to use. That balance is very difficult to strike, and people get tired of it. Cyber criminals are taking advantage of that and making it look like, oh, here, you don't have to do that. It's so much easier. Do it this way. And they are fooling people into doing the wrong thing. Another popular attack that's just really starting to gain traction. It's called Zoom bombing. This obviously came out shortly after the COVID pandemic came out, and people were really rushing to Zoom. It was amazing how Zoom just captured the video conferencing market at that time, and cyber criminals didn't miss it. They saw an opportunity to grab some credentials, get onto meetings, and capture an awful lot of data about an organization just by being in those meetings and participating quietly, lurking in the background of meetings like that. So Zoom bombing is, again, another new way in which cyber criminals are getting into your network so that they can figure out how to get at your data, deprive you of it so they can charge you a lot of money to get it back. Whoops, sorry. As I think I mentioned earlier, I hope I did, all of these are examples of social engineering. Social engineering. And what that means is that instead of programmatically attacking a digital device, either by sending tons and tons of messages to clog the device so that it can't do its job, like a direct denial of service attack, or by changing something in the code to break through the security of the device. That's digital engineering. That's the kind of stuff we did forever. Now, in the last several years, we've discovered that it's easier to hack at the person, hack at the user, and go through them to figure out how to get at the data. And because it's been so successful, because we are so vulnerable, cyber criminals have seized upon this as the most popular way to attack us. And so what do you do about that? What can you do? From a very real perspective, the only thing you can do is to train and provide incentives for your people to defend themselves. When I talk about training, I'm not talking about giving a course. September 3rd, here's your course. No, I'm talking about a program. I'm talking about an ongoing program, a program where there's always going to be another training that you have to attend. It's mandatory. And at that training, you will hear stuff you've heard before because it's being drilled into you. And there's nothing you can do about that. You need to have it drilled into you. Provide your people with training, provide your people with notifications of new attacks that have emerged, perhaps. Give them strategies for protecting themselves, remind them of those strategies, reinforce those strategies, and even provide motivation for them to adopt those strategies. Perhaps you do your own phishing attack, and anybody who stops it gets an award, and anybody who doesn't get the award. You can go further than that. There are companies that provide unbelievable incentives to those people who put a stop to a test exploit. It's a good thing to do. And not for nothing, some of you are probably sitting there saying, well, we're incenting them to do their job. They're supposed to do that anyway. Yeah, that's fine. That's just fine. But when you're being asked for $1 million to get your data back, talk to me about how they're supposed to do that anyway. The reality is you've got to protect yourself. And the only way to do that is teach your people to protect themselves. Now, let it not be said that there aren't software solutions available. There are. There are software solutions coming out that basically study behavior. They're basically doing the same thing in reverse. They're doing social engineering. They're looking at what users do and comparing it to what they usually do. And if they see something unusual happening, they flag that, and they alert on that, and they explore that. And often they will find somebody who's doing something they shouldn't ought to be doing. And the software has been successful at stopping some ransomware attacks. It's new generally. It's a few years in development now. Some are older than others, but none has claimed the category killer for heuristic ransomware protection. Your best protection is to train your people. And you start off by recruiting your people. We want you to join the war against ransomware. It's everybody's responsibility. Everybody has to step up and provide their participation in getting this done. I hope that that's been helpful. This is indeed the predominant way in which email attacks are happening. And hopefully, Gladys, did we get any questions?
Yes, we do. First of all, thanks, Howard, for that great presentation. As always, you have the best slides in the game. I love the training slides there. We have a question here from Pam to your final point about training. So Pam asked, you're saying that user training is the main protection, but isn't there software to protect against ransomware?
Yeah, I think she asked that question just before I wrapped up. Yeah, there is. There are a variety of products that are all using social engineering techniques. They're also using, you betcha, artificial intelligence and machine learning, as everything is doing. They are using artificial intelligence and machine learning to study patterns, to study what people do, to study behaviors, and determine if a behavior is anomalistic, it's unusual. And that software has been somewhat effective. I suspect we're going to see it get more successful as time goes on because the technologies are getting better. But I think it's still very early to confirm that.
Right, fair point. From Greg, does anybody actually get their data back when they pay the ransom?
I've seen stats ranging from 40% to about 60% of victims do get their data back when they pay the ransom. Of course, that doesn't include those who then get attacked again because the criminals know they've got somebody who'll pay.
Right. And then sneak in a question of my own here, Howard, because I think it's good to reiterate. Is the prevailing rule still do not pay the ransom? Is that something that partners have to drill into their customers?
Given that there is no ESQ following my name, I'm not going to pretend to provide legal advice. I would say that it's really very much based on the situation. If you're talking about an enormous amount of data that's very critical, you've got a decision to make. To say that don't pay the ransom is like saying we don't negotiate with terrorists. And I'm sorry, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but plenty of terrorists have been negotiated with over the years. It's a decision you have to make case by case, I think.
Right. Here's a question from Wahid. Is it common to see ransomware in Bitcoin? Or ransom in Bitcoin, excuse me?
Well, I suspect that some cyber criminals think that cryptocurrency will be harder for the FBI to trace. So they can take their payment that way and they won't, the FBI won't be able to find them. That is an urban legend. The more digital it is, the easier it is to trace. So if you are being asked to pay in cryptocurrency, say, gee, thanks. That sounds good to me. But, as I think we've all seen, cryptocurrency, the bottom seems to be dropping out right now. So I suspect you won't see anybody looking for payment in cryptocurrency in the near future.
Right. I want to kind of follow up on one of your previous responses about the paying the ransomware, kind of adjacent to that. So as partners, should they consider lawyering up maybe, or brushing up on their skills on the laws, around paying the ransomware and the guarantees that gives their customers, if there are any guarantees that gives to their customers? Like, would it be to a partner's benefit, I'm guessing, to maybe ask someone who does have an EFQ at the end of their name?
Yeah, and that is an excellent follow-up question, Gladys. Thank you for it. It's, of the first two choices you gave, I would discard the second one. Don't try to bone up on the law yourself. You can read a million different things and you'll probably get at least 500,000 different interpretations. But do engage an attorney to counsel you on what to do and what to not do. You don't want to be telling somebody to pay a ransom. That's really not within the scope of your expertise. It is within the scope of an attorney's expertise. And more often than not, I suspect that your attorney will tell you to have the customer speak to their attorney.
Right. And then one last question before we move on to our next little presentation here. Again, from Wahid, can you talk a little bit about cyber insurance in terms of paying ransom?
Yeah. I've done several articles on cyber insurance and a couple of presentations as well. And every time I've researched cyber insurance, I've gotten varying observations of what's going on in that marketplace. Some of those, and the ones that I tend to feel are more accurate, compare cyber insurance to like home warranty programs, where you can buy a whole home program to protect your dishwasher, your washing machine, your refrigerator. Everything in your house is protected by this one blanket warranty. And doesn't that sound great? And it only costs this many hundreds of dollars a year. Fantastic. And then when you take out that policy, only then do you discover that each thing you call in for has a special surcharge or something like that, or a minimum, or a copayment, or some other, small print a condition that you have to fulfill. That's personally why I've never taken out a second home warranty. With cyber insurance, you really, let the buyer beware, caveat emptor. Study the policy very carefully. Understand what it does and does not cover. Make sure your attorney confirms what it does and does not cover. Because I'm not saying that cyber insurance companies are scammers. I'm not saying that. I am saying that it is very possible that some are. And you may encounter one of those. And you need to be extremely careful, because I've never been able to figure out how the actuarials establish the likelihood of incidents and the mean average value of those incidents. I think it's a very difficult science. And therefore, if you're going to get cyber insurance, get it from a highly reputable company and have the policy scoured very carefully before you move ahead.
Right. Definitely do a bunch of research before you sign any papers.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Howard. Thanks for that great presentation.